Hi, everyone. I'm Paula. I'm here with my colleague Naomi, and we're going to talk a little bit about our research on space for cargo bikes. We are both from the engineering firm ARUP. Yeah, with at ARUP we focus on sustainable development, and we're a collective of 18,000 about that engineers across many different countries. Um, and we operate in also many markets, whereas Naomi and I are from the city's planning and design team, where we focus on transport, architecture, and urbanism. And today we're going to talk a little bit about our research, which focuses on the cargo bike and the usage of the urban space. But before we deep dive into the cargo bikes world, we wanted to also take a little bit of step outside of that and talk a little about the context in which we are in right now in society. So we all know about the European targets to sustainability. For example, the European Green Deal, which fosters research to boost the sustainable development. But we also see more and more local policies being aligned with that and also aligned with the sustainable development goals. So incentivizing livable cities, decarbonization, as well as, of course, active travel and public transport, which are very much aligned with that. And we see cargo bikes as very central to all of this. They are increasingly important in urban logistics because they indeed promote this health, well-being, and the movement towards green of our cities. They are also expected to replace about 15% of van journeys in the coming years, which of course has a change in the demand for space. So on the one hand, they are smaller than vans. So with less vans, you think, oh, there will be more space. But how will then the cargo bike occupy that space? How, and that's basically our question. How and where will cargo bikes need space? For how long? And that's kind of what we are investigating in this research.
Yeah. Hello. So in this presentation, we'll guide you through these five topics. We'll start with the introduction of the project. We go to the Trinity exploration, the highlights of the interviews we have done in the past half year, the systematic framework that we came up with actual steps for municipalities to implement cargo bikes in their design of streets, and the design research, and ending with the guidance space for cargo bikes. It is in Dutch, the publication, but the presentation will be in English. So just to know where we are. So we have done this project for the past 6 months with the core team, with Martin sitting over there as project manager, Tilini, myself, and Paula. And we have done it together with Jos, who was our external feedback provider. Also, many of the pictures are taken by Jos, so credits to you. So the client of our project was Tour de Force, which you might know. And together with a work group of several organizations and municipalities, we have done work sessions and presentations to get their feedback and to get the project going. Yeah. And we have used this double diamond approach, which it gives space for iteration and going back and forth in the process. And because we did a research design as well, it was nice that we could always come back to this approach. And it has two deliverables. So first the systematics, which you can see in the middle, and it ends with the sketch designs, which we will show you in the presentation. Okay, then content-wise, we have divided the space for cargo bikes into three analysis layers: the area type, user type, and the step in the journey. Because we saw a lot of differences in the area type. So, for example, pedestrian streets, residential streets, shopping streets, they're designed in a different way for different users. the user types, the service provider, package delivery, and the shop owner, they all have different ways of using the space, have a different time frame. So we tried to implement this in the design research and the steps in the journey. So when we look at the steps in the journey, there were four major bottlenecks slash opportunities that we could find. So first is the load and unload. That means like a cargo bike goes to a delivery address and it has to unload their cargo bike. It needs approximately 1 to 3 minutes standing on the pavement or on a loading zone before it gets going again. The transition from moving to stationary means a moving cargo bike needs a certain space in the public space. And when it parks, then how is the curb designed? How is the space designed to get to this pavement? We've looked into this. The parking, so for a longer period, for example, overnight parking. If you have a battery in the cargo bike, it can get on fire. So how do you look into these designs? And the charging, which is also differences between the different user types. So the first user type is the package delivery service. So as you can see, it starts here at the beginning of the day at the distribution center. It loads the cargo bike and it gets to the different neighborhoods to deliver packages. It needs loading and unloading. But it doesn't need parking or charging because we have done interviews and they mentioned that the cargo bike doesn't have that many packages that it needs to be recharged during the day. It will get back to the distribution center, gets charging again, and then get going.
So the second type of user type is the shop owner. So here we can think of, for example, a bakery or a wine shop that delivers their products with a cargo bike. They also have a different usage of the space, given that they don't have this hub like the package delivery, which means that what Naomi said is also about the charging and the risks with the, for example, fire of the battery are higher because this type of user actually has to park their cargo bike at home or inside their shop to store it safely. That also not only requires extra space, but then also requires extra insurances. So most of these steps are then done at home or at their shop, the loading step, and effectively in the city, so in the urban space, they mostly unload, which is a really quick stop to unload and deliver the product and keep on going. The final user type is the service provider. Here we can think of, for example, a nail artist, or a plumber who will carry their materials to the delivery where they are going to provide the service with the cargo bike. There are some similarities with the shop owner, given that they also don't have a hub. So they also need to park their cargo bike at home, or if they do have a business site there, which has the same constraints and needs as the previous user type. And unlike all the other two that we mentioned, this is the main type of user that actually has to park in the urban space as well, away from their destination. So they will provide a service which will last a couple hours, and that of course then requires, or ideally they would have a place to park their bike safely and store them, because they also have other materials sometimes inside our cargo bike, given that they're going to a next destination to provide other services. So ideally they have a secure place to park in the city. Based on the interviews and these types of users, as well as some level of research that we could find about the popularity of the different types of cargo bikes, we identified what we call our cargo bike family. So here we can see the main types that go down in popularity, where the Long John is the most popular because of the ride dynamics is easier and also has a good maximum load. However, we also see an ever-growing trend to use the cargo bikes in combination with the trailer. So in our research, we take it also a little bit as a separate question, given that the trailer is actually detachable. So it's not in the unit, so it can also be dealt a little bit separately in that sense. So the final analysis layer is then the area types, where we first look at the pedestrian street. We see here we try to map opportunities and challenges, of course. So on the one hand, we see the opportunities of this type of street because we have many potential clients for cargo bikes, given that there's concentration of shops that can be using a cargo bike for their own products or using a package delivery service, for example. There's also, of course, a wide pavement. It's a spacious area. And there's an easier transition to the pavement for the cargo bikes. However, it is a pedestrian street, so the priority is and should keep on being for the pedestrians. So bike users have to go at lower speeds or even dismount. That is if they are also allowed in this type of area, which during business hours, we also know that most of the streets bicycles are not allowed. And the network is therefore not really connected to this street is not really well connected to the rest of the network. So it creates a little bit of a blockage for cargo bike movement. The second type of street is then the shopping street, where it's a lot more multimodal. Cargo bike can cycle on the road if it's, for example, a shared space or on the bicycle path. So it's an opportunity because it's reachable and, of course, cargo bikes can cycle faster. And similar to the pedestrian streets, you also have multiple delivery places close to each other. However, it is also a challenge that the pavement is narrow and you also have other functions such as terraces and things like that. The road is often a bit busier. You have also other types of modalities, so public transport, cars. And the transition from the road to the pavement is also with a higher curb. In a residential street, it's much quieter, so that's seeing an opportunity that it also has more space, and there's a bit more flexibility in this usage of the space because of that. However, it's also a challenge that because it's less connected to the urban network as well, and cargo bikes also have to do less efficient deliveries. And what I mean by that is it is not like the other places that you have a concentration of delivery points in the same area. So from a GPS data that we collected, we could see that a cargo bike on a residential delivery area, they cycle, deliver in one location, then they have to cycle a lot further to the next destination. So thinking about this, for example, in our design is important. How do we consider these needs to make this more efficient for them? So, of course, we want to first draw on the opportunities that we observed and address the challenges of all these three key layers to provide a well-rounded design on how to give space for cargo bikes. So yeah, also like we mentioned before, we did a number of interviews with municipalities, users, and YOS here present. And we wanted to highlight a few things that we observed. At least here in the Netherlands, there's also not yet a legislation. So a national legislation, which creates a little bit of a challenge of where are we going, how are we going to address this movement of this type of vehicle on our streets. And also, because of that, and of course other reasons, municipalities are also at different stages and taking different approaches on how they should provide space for cargo bikes. So here we can think of Groningen, whereas the city center is mainly a shared space. It has a completely different usage of space and how this space is separated if we think of comparing it to Rotterdam, for example. Everyone, however, mentioned the importance of providing safety, traffic safety, and the more easy movement and more organized movement in this shared space and 30 kilometers per hour roads that also facilitate for cargo bike movement. Three key topics also appear recurrently in our interviews. One is given this transition period that we are right now, that we see cargo bikes and vans kind of overlapping in some areas or competing even. There is also the need for flexibility of this usage of space. How do we combine both of them? And also without creating more and more physical obstacles. So if we think of a car that is just standing still on a street the entire day, is just creating a box that is a blockage for the public space. How do we promote the cargo bike usage and parking locations that don't create that? So not creating a box that also will be used every now and then and just stay there occupying space that could be used for others. And finally, this mindset and education and training to keep inform people that the cargo bike actually helps to free up space. They are smaller, they are faster, so they are not creating a blockage on your path, even though they are bigger than a normal bike.
Yeah. So because different municipalities have a different starting point, as we noticed, we thought of creating a model which could include flexible use of flexible starting points of municipalities. So we developed a 5-step approach, which is from a higher scale to a more lower scale, which can be used by municipalities or governments. Yeah. So we'll guide you through the steps. The first one is identifying the starting points and principles. So what are the ambitions of a municipality? Do they want to implement zero emission zones? What's their policy on parking, car parking, bicycle parking? Get this going. And we saw in our case study, the municipality of Rotterdam, that they made a map showing all the streets and what type of policy they would like to implement in these different streets. Which leads to the second steps is get the stakeholders on board, because there are multiple organizations or entrepreneurs or residents who want to make use of these cargo bikes. It's important to get them involved, to speak with them, and also get to know their viewpoints. We have made an 8-step approach, and for example, also monitor and evaluate the process is really important. So keep talking with them. In Rotterdam, we already saw this logistics 010 group working together, coming together and talking about this logistics thing with cargo bikes. That's really important to get increased use of cargo bikes in space. The third step is looking into the network level strategy. So it's not only about parking, it's also about moving through a city. For example, for heavy truck logistics, there's already green lights implemented which prioritize heavy trucks at traffic lights. You could, as a municipality, think about these kind of systems. How do you guide these cargo bikes through a city? Maybe some streets are more useful for cargo bikes because they have because of the design of the street, and other streets you would like to have them more pedestrian based. So look into what type of streets do you want to use for cargo bikes. How do you want the traffic lights prioritization? Do you give access to different areas or maybe not? Which leads to the 4th step, which is more looking into the area and street level design. So the actual design of how does a parking spot look like. For example, Paula already named Rotterdam with the shared space inner city. This means that there is not really a transition between the driving cargo bike and the parked cargo bike. There is a transition in how fast, in the speed, but not in the design of the street. So how do you implement this as a municipality? What are your principles for this? And there's also an opportunity for innovative apps, for example, like we saw Coding the Curbs, in which you can rent a space on the street. And this leads to more flexible use of the street, maybe during the day by logistics, during the night by parking. Because we have small cities, we need to be flexible in our use of the streets. The 5th step is about the inclusivity and accessibility. So because there are many different sizes of cargo bikes, they may not all fit in elevators, for example, you see in the left figure. Or when there's a railing to get your bike up, a 2-wheeled bike often, how does a 4-wheeled cargo bike get up there? Think about those kind of details as well. And also the different user types. So the service provider, they might need a longer parking spot on the street, while the package delivery only needs loading, unloading spaces. How can you develop flexible spaces that can be used by different user types?
Yeah, so with all of that, we try to propose a few design alternatives or how should the street profile look like for friendly cargo bike environments. For each of the three area types, we consider two scenarios, but we're going to show one for each here. So starting with the pedestrian street, our goal here was, of course, to maintain this prioritization for pedestrians, create a minimal blockage but also facilitate the usage of cargo bikes in this area, given that it's also a high potential market area. So what we thought of was to provide access to cargo bikes only to a certain part of the street, so by the intersections, where it's also clear for pedestrians to know that that area will be used for entering and exiting cargo bikes, only for loading and unloading as well, so that these don't occupy space for longer there, and making use of the already existing stationary zones, so where there are trees, where there are benches. So there is already a space there that is not used for flow. Can we make use of that better for cargo bikes? Also, what we thought about here was to create less of a blockage of this type of streets for cargo bikes in this case. And then parking or loading, charging should be done in, for example, inside bicycle parking facilities or at back streets or even inside shops, which then should, of course, be accessible for cargo bikes. The second type of street, which is the shopping street, our goal was to create this flexibility that was mentioned many times because of this transition with the vans as well. So in this type of areas, we expect both movements still for quite some time, which in the end leads for this idea of creating a flexible environment where you also have a high turnover. So mostly loading and unloading zones in this space. Here we also think of removing some space for cars. We also see that there's quite a lot of space reserved for cars. And if we need more space, then that is where we can search for. Here also parking, then we think should be done also inside streets or inside shops, for example. And in the actual space, minimal elements. So not bike racks and things like that. First, because it's a loading and unloading zone, but also to create flexibility for these different user types and sizes of bikes. So finally, for the residential street, our goal was to think about these livable environments where we can have kids playing on the streets, a nicer atmosphere for urban area and a residential area. So what we thought here was indeed combining also the needs of these users who also need a space to park at their home, but cannot, for example, carry their cargo bike up to the third floor. So we think about proposing only here, a box to park the cargo bike with some greenery and solar panels can also be used then to charge the cargo bike. So this would be, of course, for residents, but in addition, open space for example, service providers and people that will not park there every day, but that will also need some space to stay there for a prolonged period.
Yeah, so the designs are more elaborated in the publication that will be happening next month this year. After this project, we will have a more international look into this cargo bike field, where we will try to look into the different urban fabrics. We have ARUP is an international office, so we have our colleagues in New York and Sydney and London. We will have a work session on how we can look into these different urban fabrics and the use of cargo bikes, and what we also can learn from the Netherlands. Yes. So if you would like the publication, we can send it to you, of course. This is our email.
Any questions? Thank you for your attention.
First of all, let me congratulate you for a very detailed presentation on the cargo bike and case study of Rotterdam. For a pedestrian street, you have planned, can you go back to that slide, please, so that we can ask question? Yeah, yes, this one. Here you have suggested the cargo bike lane nearer to the median of the road. But when suppose the fellow has to deliver something to the nearby areas, how will he crisscross? And have you taken that into account? While because then he will come in conflict with the pedestrian movement, isn't it?
Yeah, so we have looked into the flow of the pedestrians and where their main pedestrian flow is. And in the middle of the street, there's actually the stationary zone or object zone where there's already trees and benches and bins. So we thought about putting these spaces between
Oh,
the
so that's very nice. What I am asking is that from that middle lane, if the fellow has to cross the street and go to the blue line where the
so you
residences are
park
there,
you park the cargo bike in the middle of the street, and then you get the delivery and bring it by foot
so
to
he's
to
not
the address.
supposed to take the bike to the house or to the building
No, but
near
this
to
is
the
like
building.
3 meters, 4
Yeah.
meters.
Uh,
So
do you
it's not that
understand
far.
my question? Yes, it's related to the urban planning, not about the cargo bike per se. But uh, suppose from the black line, you have to go left towards the blue buildings. Yeah, yes, yes. How, do you expect the cargo bike also to move, or you want the cargo bike to be parked this side and only the delivery to go?
Yeah, park it there where it's parked in the middle, and then walk to the shops or the addresses.
Okay, okay.
So
Thank you.
there's no crossing of the pedestrian flow.
Oh, okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So the main reason was also because, yeah, these streets can also get very busy with pedestrians. So we want to make use of the area that is not used for flow. And here, both in this street and in the shopping street, you have a concentration of shops. So you can have multiple deliveries in the same area. So it's actually can be efficient to also stop your bike and get the packages and deliver instead of having to cycle everywhere, which is different than the residential area.
I was just wondering, I'm an urban planner, so from that point of view, I was just wondering that will you have sufficient space for movement of cargo bike as well as parking of cargo bike? If a cargo bike is parked and there is a cargo bike following that in the same lane, what will happen to that?
So here we think of loading and unloading. So it's really quick stops. So it's not parking.
I think what he means is where do they ride? Where does the cargo bike gonna ride? Where are they driving? Is that in the same? Okay, so to go from riding to parking, you have to cross the people that are walking there. So every time you have to park, you have to cross them. Every time you want to ride, you have to cross them again. I think that's what he's meaning.
But where you cross them is also at the intersection, right? So you have multiple modalities crossing
No,
there.
but
So it's also
they
a
ride in the middle.
attention area. Is that what you mean?
May I ask here? See, this is very interesting. This is the lane where you are suggesting the cargo bike to go, right? Move on this and on this, right?
Yeah, so here they enter exit. Enter exit, so they don't cycle.
You don't cycle through, so where will they cycle? Cycle will here?
They cycle, enter, stop, deliver.
So if you don't have a road here, you have only straight road like this, then
This is straight.
no. So long road is only this one, and there are lanes here, where are generally pedestrian lanes.
Okay, thank you.
See, on this,
Yeah.
you expect the cargo bike to move like this, isn't it? And when somebody has parked here and gone to deliver here, so will that not come in conflict with the movement of the cargo bike? That was my question. Just think of it.
I'll think about it. I don't know.
Yeah, so we've made two scenarios, and what scenario one is actually mobility hubs in the side streets. So that means cargo bikes are not allowed at all in this pedestrian street. And in this scenario, cargo bikes are allowed to enter this area, but not like going through the whole street. So they can load and unload in the spaces, and then they have to get out again. But it's not like parking or it should not be filled the whole street. So
And we also think about that because we have a lot of these pedestrian areas have a back street, but you also have some that don't. So to go and have a delivery, you have to park on side streets, and it is also doing by walking in the end. So providing this a little bit closer to the destination just makes it more efficient without really obstructing or significantly obstructing the pedestrian flows in our opinion.
yeah, it's still a pedestrian area, but with a waiver for cargo bikes. So in exceptions, they can enter.